Welcome everyone to the Phoenix Report. I'm Jack Connor. Um, I wanted to take a few minutes to talk to you guys about my friend Greg for a little bit. If you followed this podcast regularly, I'm sure that most of you know that I've been in a rock band here in Florida called Vertebraker for nearly a decade now. I want to talk to you about a very important and beloved member of that band's history, and that was Greg Summers, who was our lead guitar player from 2014 through 2019 and was part of our longest lasting lineup to date, arguably our definitive lineup. I was thinking about my old friend on, this past Monday, which was Monday, March 27th. I saw on my calendar that it was Greg's 50th birthday. So I shot him a text first thing in the morning to wish him a happy birthday. Excuse me. I hadn't talked to Greg since last December. And I remember we had a pretty good conversation, just, not really even talking about music or anything like that. And, I was giving him a copy of our old EP that we had. I had finally printed it up on CDs, so I wanted to mail him a copy. And I remember we had a good conversation, just, really talking to each other about how our families were doing. His son Parker, who, when I first met Greg, I think Parker would have been around 9 years old when I first met him. He had just recently turned 18, which blew my mind. But he was doing great, and it made me really happy to hear because Parker's a great kid. So I was really glad to hear that he was doing well. But back to last Monday. So I go ahead and I shoot him the happy birthday text, hoping that he might get back to me and maybe we could catch up a little, even if it's just for a little bit. Later that morning, much to my surprise, I got a text from Rod Bobo, who was our old bass player and one of the original members of the band of Vertebraker. So I sent Rod a message a few days before about something unrelated, something about one of our old songs and just something random like that. And he got back to me after that day, and he gave me the news that Greg had quietly been battling a rare form of cancer for the past few months, and had passed away a few days earlier. I think the Saturday before that, which would have been Saturday, March 25th. So I was completely stunned. Here I was thinking about this guy because it was his birthday. Hoping to reconnect for a little bit, only to find out that he's gone. And as of this recording, it's been over a week, and it's still pretty hard to process. Especially considering that I had no idea he was sick. Looking back, in hindsight, I guess I'm not all that surprised that he kept this private and kept it close to the vest. That was Greg. He was very private and very introverted. But yeah, it's a tremendous loss. But I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about him. I had first met Greg Summers in the spring of 2014. Vertebraker, we'd really been together less than a year at that point. We had just recorded our first EP, which, for those of you who don't know, that's a term for like a small album, which is usually a collection of 3 to 5 songs. We ended up recording 4 songs. We'd worked with an incredible producer by the name of Brett Hessla, who was known for being the lead singer of the bands Virgos Merlot and Dark New Day. He was also well known for being the touring bass player for Creed at the height of their success in the early 2000s. So it was really exciting to work with him. We recorded our first EP in February of that year, and we were really proud of how it turned out. But unfortunately, things weren't working out scheduling wise with our lead guitar player at the time, who's a really great guy, really talented player by the name of Jake Olson. Still keep in touch with Jake. He's a great dude. But but since but since we parted ways after the recording, we needed a guitar player. We needed a lead guitar player, I should say, and we were asking around and auditioning a few guys when Rod had suggested bringing in his buddy Greg. Now, Rod and Greg, they had known each other at that point for nearly 20 years. And they had played together in various cover bands over the years. Like these guys were very close friends. They knew each other very well. And at the time, Rod really didn't think that Greg would be all that interested in joining the band full time. You know, um, I guess at that point, Greg wasn't really sure he wanted to do an original band. You know, he had his wife, he had his kid. He wasn't really focused on that. But Rod thought he might be willing to maybe learn our songs and fill in for a bit until we could find a permanent replacement. And when Greg came in, we were really impressed with how well he was able to play and how easily he was able to pick up our songs, and we just felt like there was some chemistry there. And like I said, Greg wasn't originally looking for a gig like that, but he seemed to be pretty impressed with us too, and at least it felt that way. But it just sort of happened naturally. We knew that he was the right guy to take over, and that was that. He ended up staying with the band for almost 5 years. We we had a lot of great times. We played a lot of shows, and we recorded a second EP together called Everything Before Now. And Greg had a big hand in producing and engineering that record. He was a multi-talented guy. Not only was he just a brilliant lead guitar player, but he was without a doubt the most tech-savvy member of the band. His day job, by trade, he was an IT analyst. So he knew exactly what he was doing when it came to gear and computers and recording and all of that stuff. And we would often practice at his house, and he had this really cool, like, elaborate setup in which he could run the guitar and bass amps just right directly into the mixer. He also had an electronic drum set right there, and the vocal mics. Everything ran into that mixer, so he could just record everything directly, and we could only really hear each other through studio headphones. It was great when it came to spontaneous recording, and we would often do several like live video streams, which are still up on YouTube today, both on the band's channel and on Greg's personal YouTube channel as well, which is still up, by the way. I'll have some links to that as well. I haven't seen his channel in a long time, but I know Greg used to put a lot of like guitar instructional videos on there and playthroughs and all kinds of other things. I know he also had his pilot's license, which was really cool. Like we kind of joke that he'd be sort of our Bruce Dickinson, who's the lead singer of Iron Maiden and also happens to be a commercial pilot. So um, that was kind of a reference we would often throw at him. But when I look at our time together in the band, some of my favorite memories with Greg would be, those moments in band practice when he and I would, every now and then, we'd spontaneously start jamming on like a random cover song together. It didn't happen too often, but sometimes, like for example, I'd be talking about a song of ours that was called Too Late. And sometimes when I'd mention that, he'd sort of jokingly play the opening lick from the Def Leppard song, Too Late. And I'd sing a few bars of that with him, and we'd start, before we'd start playing our song that happened to have the same name as that song. So little things like that that would bring some smiles to our faces whenever we'd be jamming together. Because after all, we weren't just guys in a band; we were all massive music fans. We still are. Um, I remember one time in particular, we were doing a sound check, before a gig we were playing at a bar in Melbourne called the Landfill Saloon. Now we hadn't started our set yet. I forget exactly why it happened. Maybe it was just taking us a long time to get set up with the sound guy. I don't remember exactly what the situation was, but I remember Greg started playing a riff to this Van Halen song, which it wasn't one of their big hits. It was more of an obscure album track, but it was called "Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do." It's off of their 1995 album Balance. Really good song, by the way. Go look it up if you haven't. But much to his surprise, much to Greg's surprise, I should say, I started like as he was playing it, I just started belting out like the opening verse of the song, and he and I just kind of kept playing it through to like the chorus, and then we stopped. We didn't play the whole song or anything, and the other guys in the band, it's not like they kicked into it with us, but but it was just one of those kind of fun moments, and I remember a few people in the crowd there. They started cheering. They thought that was really cool, and Greg just looked at me with like the biggest smile. Like I could tell like he thought that was really cool to be able to play a song like that and have someone sing along to it. Geeking out over little things like that was always really fun for us. I know the month of March was always a really fun time of year for us to all play together. His birthday and mine are only 2 days apart, and our drummer at the time, Jarrett Lang, his birthday was in March as well. And Rod's girlfriend Lacey, who's now his wife, she also has her birthday in March. So that was always a special time for us. Anytime we got to play a March show. I remember there was one show in particular it was at a venue called the Boondocks in Melbourne, which it's not there anymore, but that was a great venue. And I remember at that show, we all like had a cake after we played our set, and it had like the band's logo and colors on it. And I forget who made the cake. I don't know if that was Jarrett's mom or Jarrett's girlfriend Chelsea, who's now his fiance, I believe. And so I forget who ended up making it. But yeah, like little things like that was always a really great memory. And that was the thing about that lineup, that part of the band. It really felt like a family atmosphere for most of the time. And look, that's not to say that everything was perfect all the time. I know that he and I occasionally butted heads a little bit when it came to creative and business decisions, especially towards the end. He was certainly the most outspoken when it came to, if there was a difference of opinion here or there, and which really didn't happen all that often. And sometimes, sometimes arguments could get a little bit heated, but again, that was very rare. It didn't happen all that often. And even when it did, he and I would make up almost instantly. So I'm glad that even if we had a disagreement on something, it never really got like super personal, or there weren't like hurt feelings involved. At least I hope not. Because regardless of whatever differences of opinion we might have had about anything in particular, I always had the deepest amount of love and respect for the guy. More than just our shared love of music, he and I would often talk about things like faith and family. He was an incredible husband and father, and I really looked up to him, kind of like a big brother. And I know the rest of the guys did too as well. I know that if he were here right now listening to this, he probably wouldn't want me talking about him like this publicly. Like I said, Greg was very introverted. As much as he loved playing music, I often felt like he could be very conflicted about, even playing live and everything that comes with that. I think he enjoyed the live performance aspect of it. I think he did enjoy playing in front of people, but I know he could also be very easily bothered if like the sound on stage and the mix wasn't right, or if we didn't have as big of a crowd, or if we weren't getting paid all that well, or if he didn't like the venue we were playing, or any number of things. I know we were never a touring band, but I know he didn't really particularly care for traveling all that far. I imagine he wouldn't have wanted to be away from home for long periods of time, and I can't really blame him for that. You know, he certainly wasn't comfortable with being in the spotlight or being the center of attention. Um, he was certain, and he was absolutely his own biggest critic. You know, when he passed last weekend, and I had heard that he didn't really want to have any kind of funeral or memorial service. I was disappointed, but knowing him, I wasn't overly surprised. You know, I felt that towards the end of our time together in the band, I felt like and look, I wasn't inside the guy's head. I don't want to speak for him, especially not now. But I always suspected that he may have been frustrated that maybe the band wasn't as popular or successful as he felt we should have been. I can't say I disagreed with him on that. But I remember one incident, one situation in particular, when we played what was our biggest show to date, which was that was at the Plaza in Orlando, which is a pretty big theater. We were opening up for Steel Panther to a nearly sold out crowd, and as much as he enjoyed playing in a big theater like that, and he loved that part of it. He loved getting to meet the guys from Steel Panther. Um, I do remember later he kind of confided into me that he didn't really get as much satisfaction from our set like he thought he would. I guess because he felt that the people who were there weren't really there to see us. Which technically that's true, but I remember when he told me that it broke my heart to hear him tell me that he felt that way. Especially what was arguably our finest hour, and so I don't know. I guess it depends on how you look at these things. I imagine some of that probably came from frustration that he felt about the current state of the music industry, and I'm sure he had his doubts that if a band like ours would ever have a shot of doing anything of any significance in today's musical climate. And I understand that. Sometimes I have those doubts myself. I guess time will tell as far as that goes, but I hope that he's looking down now, and he's looking down on all of us now, I should say. And I hope he realizes how many people admired, respected, and loved him here in our little Central Florida music community. Just all the outpouring from fans and friends of ours has just been incredible, and people loved Greg, and so did I. I never did. I never did get to talk to him. I should say this past December when I talked to him and just kind of checked in with him a little bit. I never really did get to talk to him about when the current incarnation of the band and I went to Los Angeles, and we got to play the legendary Whiskey A Go Go on the Sunset Strip. Now, I mean, look, I don't know how closely he followed what the band was doing after he left, or if he had heard about the gig we played out there. I do know that Greg was a huge fan of hard rock from the 1980s, and many bands that he loved were part of that Los Angeles glam rock scene during that era that really made the Sunset Strip famous. I mean, it was already famous, but that certainly took it to another level. Um, even though Greg wasn't in the band when we had went there, I I hope that on some level that he took some satisfaction knowing that songs that he had co-written and recorded in the studio were being played live at they were being played live at the Whiskey A Go Go, arguably the most famous rock club in the world. Um, I'd like to think that he must have appreciated that on some level. I hope that I hope that he got some satisfaction in that. I really do. But most of all, I want to extend my deepest sympathies and condolences to everyone who knew him. and everyone who loved him, especially his father, Gary, his brother, Tony, his wife, Stacy, and their son, Parker. I, I can't imagine the heartbreak they must be going through right now. But I hope they take comfort in knowing that they don't have to go through this alone. This has been a hard week. Greg, I love you, and I'm gonna miss you, my friend. I'll never forget playing with you and all the times we had together, and I just, yeah, I just hope that you're proud of what we ended up doing together, and hope that you felt the same way. And I have a feeling that you did. I love you, Greg. I'll miss you. And for the rest of you, just take care of yourselves and each other. And don't let little arguments get in the way of relationships. And if you have people in your life that you care for and you love them, make sure you tell them. Make sure you lift each other up, and definitely make sure you keep an eye on your health too. Like I said, take care of yourselves and each other. This has been the Phoenix Report. I'm Jack Connor, and I'll talk to you guys later.